Two experts in ICF.
Yeah.
Decades of experience. One podcast.
Yeah.
Two hosts with a lot to say.
Look, I cannot sit through a struggle. I gotta get up and hustle. I gotta push through the pain, cause really that's how you build muscle.
Welcome to the Build with ICF podcast with your hosts, Trevor Brown and Heather Herring Brown. Yep, they're a package deal. With over 20 years of ICF installation experience, Trevor can throw down some expertise on sales, marketing, and training. On the other side of the table sits Heather, aka the girl boss, and she's earned the title as the owner of an award-winning ICF construction company, a drafting and design company specializing in ICF. And the numbers? With a master's in accounting, she does that too. Sleeves up, boots on. This is the Build with ICF podcast.
I don't want nothing for free. I'm here to work. Been through the dirt. I've been through the dirt, yeah.
Hello.
And we're back.
We are. I'm excited today. This is going to be a good podcast.
Yeah, it's been something that, again, we're episode 13. I did check this time.
Oh, good job.
Mostly because you reminded me to check. But anyway, so episode 13. And kind of just making our way through some of these. We're going to try to alternate in, interview ones with just some that were kind of Q&A ones that we're getting from DMs and people on the website and stuff. So this is just going to be the two of us. Sorry, you're stuck with just us today. I
know, but it's going to be a good one because this question comes up every single week after our podcast airs. Then we've had so many questions on it. We figured we needed to get something out now rather than waiting down the line when we could have somebody come on and talk about it as well.
Yeah, so basically what we're going to get into today is waterproofing.
Yes.
So it's probably one of the most asked questions. Of course, I keep saying this about everything, I think. Seems like we're getting a lot of questions. So it seems like they're all the most asked questions. But the one thing about it is that I started thinking about them like, we probably need to do just a 101, kind of like what waterproofings are available without getting into anything specific about the actual brands, because the goal would be to actually bring the brands on later, or it is going to happen. We've already got some of those lined up. So we'll have manufacturers and different people and different styles of waterproofing companies come on, but it's not really fair to ask them to talk about what other options are out there and things like that. So I think it's important for us to put an episode out there first. It's basically like, okay, here's the basics of waterproofing ICF. Again, we're not experts. We have waterproofed a lot of things. We've worked with a lot of different styles of waterproofing. We do actually actively have waterproofing crews that go out and do waterproofing. So, but trust me, I read. I'm a regular commenter. I'm sure a lot of our listeners have seen me in the Facebook groups and stuff, and it's pretty comical how you can get people arguing about, no matter what I say, there's going to be people that are going to oppose what I say about different things. So it's a very opinionated subject, I think, the waterproofing thing. It gets people, heated about different options. So I think what we're going to try to do is I'm going to try to put it out there in the most unbiased way of different styles of waterproofing, and then it's going to be up to the listener to go out and do that research, and hopefully with us we'll be able to have those different episodes that you'll be able to follow up later after this episode to do some research on your own.
Well, and I think that maybe one of the easiest ways is just to kind of go through our own evolution of what we've used ourselves.
Right. Yeah, because that's the one thing nobody can dispute is our own opinion of what we have used. So
yeah,
I think it's easily, it's one of those things we can talk about our experience and for what it's worth, we'll talk about the things that we, even some of the things that we've seen out there that we, maybe don't have total familiarity with, that we'll be definitely trying to get them on and get more information. And two, I expect this to prompt questions. I'm hoping that this episode will prompt a lot of DMs and emails from people asking, more specific questions about something that we touched on. So I think we basically can start out with kind of what I would call the three basic, I would almost say there's 4 now, options for waterproofing. 5 if you count nothing. If you just don't put anything on, there might be 5.
I was going to say, because there's a lot of people out there that say you don't need waterproofing.
True.
So let's touch on that first.
This is a very geographic question.
Yes.
I've said, I've covered I covered 11 states for my territory when I was in territory management. I've done trainings in probably more states than that, but we've done certain states. I'm not picking on Wyoming, but I always bring up Wyoming because it's been some of the craziest things I've seen have been in Wyoming. And no offense, I love Wyoming. So if you're listening from there, this is nothing about you. There's just not a lot of codes and a lot of building officials in a lot of those areas. And as everyone knows, ICF is very popular in remote areas. So we are a very strongly based remote area type product. And that's where we've always done better at. I mean, I think that's changing. I think we're going to see more and more with different building techniques that we're seeing. But I do think that, some of the stuff I've seen in Wyoming, people are just not, they're perfectly fine doing something that's not being inspected. It's some of the areas I've seen the least amount of rebar in walls. Mm-hmm. I've seen, different styles of ICF that you don't see other places. And I've definitely seen people not even waterproofing things because it's not required. And I will tell you this, in my own personal experience, I've seen some of those houses that are great 20 years down the road. No water leaks. They don't, people argue, and I think this is their frame of thought, because if you're hearing this going, oh my God, how would they do that? They would actually think that's a monolithic piece of concrete. It is, it's got foam on the outside, foam on the inside. I mean, how is water getting through that? You're right to a point, right? I mean, the concrete does, is pretty good at holding water in. A lot of old water towers, swimming pools, dams are made out of concrete. I've heard a lot of these arguments. People say, well, the Hoover Dam, okay. A little bit different structure. There's different things with an ICF that I say will require waterproofing. Is the webs in the concrete do create a possible passageway of water getting through. It's very minute. It'd be very hard. It's not easy because they're sealed off with the EPS and different things that are very well molded together. But hypothetically speaking, there is a path through the concrete via a web or something. So I do suggest that everybody uses waterproofing. There's people out there say you don't need it. You're right. It's pretty damp proof itself, which is a term that I guess we got to get out there too, is there's a difference between damp proofing and waterproofing. A lot of your standard basements and crawl spaces that you see are just damp proof. They're not waterproof. That's very, very common in the stick frame business to just have a guy that sprays on usually with an orchard sprayer. They just come and they spray on a black oil based product that will basically spray on and kind of seal the cracks, if you will. And primarily what it's trying to seal is that cold joint between the stem wall and the footer. That's the super freeway for water. That's where a lot of problems come in. So they're just basically trying to seal that off and seal any kind of cracks and holes on it and color the concrete black a little bit. And that's what you'll see on most conventional job sites. That is a damp proofing. That is not a waterproofing. And we're seeing a huge shift even in the stick frame market that they are getting away from that and wanting to go to a true waterproofing in a lot of codes. So that's something that is going to change even in their world, let alone ours. So there are different levels of waterproofing / damp proofing, and it starts with liquid. That's your first. I always said, I guess the first one is no waterproofing.
The first one is no water. Yeah. The
second one would be liquid waterproofing. So a spray on. A lot of people have seen. I'll give Rubber Wall is a brand out there, and we'll hopefully have them on the podcast to talk about their product. There are that are either spray on applicated, roll on applicated, or brushed on. And in the past, I've used that product in like restricted space areas. Yes. Was where I used a lot of it. We did back in the day. This is a long time ago, but we were doing a lot of house lifting or jacking up a house and then putting a basement under it in a historic district where we lived. And so it kind of got popular for the people to come in and buy these old historic houses, jack them up, put more living space under them because you couldn't remodel or expand the house outside. So that became real popular for quite a few years. We did that. And when you would do that, there was a lot of limitation to being able to get somebody down in the hole to put the waterproofing on the outside. So that became a very good option, was to roll it on with a long stick and roller. Yep. and give you some sort of protection, even though it wasn't, a material or a solid material like other options. So that was something that was used quite a bit. The next basic, one would be a peel on or a peel and stick. We call it. A lot of different brands of peel and stick out there. And basically I think everyone's probably seen something like that. It's a bituthane. It's basically usually sold in a couple different options as far as winter and summer.
Mm-hmm. It's like fly paper.
Yeah. It'll take the hair off your arms. Trust me. You stick your arm to it. It will peel the hair off your arms. Probably the most commonly used. Yes. I would say that, and again, I'm not exact on this, but it's probably 80% of the market, I would say, is probably peel and stick. And you can all debate that in the comments, but I do think it's probably close to that, 75 to 80%. And then past that, you've got your most common would be like a dimple board or rigid, so that's a hard plastic or a harder plastic. Not as flexible, basically, but it's a dimple board. It gives you or a rain mat, some people call it, depending upon where you're at in the country, that basically will give you more of a rigid application of keeping things out. I would say there's a new product out there that kind of falls between those two, and they will also be a host on here or a guest on here. And we do use this product on ours is a composite waterproofing. Right now is the only one really doing that is Hulk System. Not a plug for them. I'll let Brandon plug them when he comes on himself, but we are using that actively. And I think it's interesting to talk about because it is a kind of a hybrid of the two. It's a liquid that then you put a membrane or you put a quartz infused fiberglass textile in the liquid, squish it into the liquid basically as a, what do you call it? A textile or
it's a textile. It's a textile that you.
It's fiberglass mat, but it's not like fiberglass that you put on stucco that you can see through it. It's almost like a sheet, a silky sheet. It squishes in, and then you put another layer of liquid on top. That forms a composite because it's a 2-part system. It's actually liquid and the material, the SRT. So that does make it a composite. The interesting thing about it is once it hardens, it's flexible. Like a Suprema or like a peel and stick, but you can't punch a hammer through it. Like you can't, that's kind of what they're famous for is their hammer test that you've seen on, people see on YouTube, but you can't put a hammer through it. And in all fairness, like that's a pretty big deal, but the other brands like you can't do that with any of the other things. So it's kind of an interesting thing. That's why I want to have them on. We're going to talk about them. That's why we've started using them, but again, not an ad for them, just kind of that other option.
Okay, so you've gone through the different types that there are. So now let's go back to, a lot of people ask us, well, why can't I use the same thing that they use on a traditional foundation? Why can't I just use that? I don't even know what it's called, that oil or a Henry's roof sealant or something like that. Why can they not use that on an ICF block?
It eats it is a big part of it. We're laughing because you're asking this question after you just told me about a video.
Hey, it's a leading question. Come on.
It is, but it's funny. Yeah, you can Google that, and there's pictures of it on there where basically it just eats the foam. I mean, you just you just need to be aware that oil-based products will, petroleum-based products will eat into the foam, and so believe it or not, I've had people argue with me and say, "Oh, it doesn't matter if it eats a little of the foam. At least it's sealing it." And I'm like, I don't think it's actually sealing it. But anyway. Debatable, but yeah, just really, really need to make sure that this is a product that will work on the foam. And it's just as simple as this. I'm not an expert on this, and I'm not a scientist. I can't remember all the exact terms of what you need to look for on the label, but it's just as simple as trying it out first. Don't go buy a bunch and just start spraying it on. Go take a sample piece or take a piece out of your garbage or whatever, broken piece of block and put it on there and see how it reacts. Don't go just spray it on your whole, basement or whatever. Yeah. And so, I mean, it's very much, it's very much possible that you could, it will just eat all the foam off it and you'll have a bunch of webs and concrete sticking out, but it's usually not that aggressive. I mean, it's a little bit of an exaggeration, but it will definitely bubble up and it will create a very ugly looking surface that's hard to cover and deal with. But no, you don't want to do that. You want to stick with something that is water-based, something that can, or that can at least be applied to ICF. And there's so many brands out there anymore. I mean, before we jumped on here, I just Googled it just to see, in today's world, ICF is so popular. Things are happening so much that it's not it's pretty easy just to Google ICF waterproofing and find a whole bunch of options, and you're going to see, the different ones. To kind of go back and like tell, the pros and cons of them as far as, and again, in my opinion and in my experience with them, starting with the liquid waterproofing. Liquid waterproofing is great for speed. It's great for, tight locations to get into. If you want to, you can have, apply it with a sprayer. You can apply it with a roller. Like there's a lot of different options for that. The biggest downfall to a liquid is the fact that you're putting it on EPS that is not necessarily a solid substrate behind it. So what we see where we have problems, at least in the West, is a lot of our soils are really rocky. Even the backfill they bring in is usually got some rock in it. It's usually not the best, and it's not sand or it's not dirt. It's usually some form of drain rock they're putting in, and most of our drain rock is not round. Mostly it's shale rock or it's shards of rock. So what they do is they end up punching holes in it.
Yep.
Because as you can imagine, you can spray something on a piece of foam and then you can, push a rock or whatever with your hand right through it because it's not solid. Now, the liquid, why it works on a concrete is because concrete's hard. So it doesn't allow for that give in the liquid to get, to actually fail. It will just hold strong because it's painted onto, you got 20 mils. Liquid is usually dries to half of what you apply it. So that's another big thing to know. If you're wanting to get 20 mil of a liquid, waterproofing on your wall, you need to make sure you're applying 40 mil wet. Most any paint place or anywhere you're maybe even buying the waterproofing should have a mill tester, which looks like a little credit card, and you can just put it right on the wall and you can check everything. Our guys have one in their pocket, and they basically have to check the mill on it to make sure, because you want to be spraying 40 plus mil to make sure you're getting a 20 mil on the dried product. So even with that, you're gonna have, you're at the I don't know. Every time I pause on a word, you turn your head
I'm thinking.
It makes me like we're. No, it's you're at the mercy. There we go. You're at the mercy of the product that you're applying it to. So the concrete wall is actually really strong. So the product that you put on it is going to stay pretty strong. Unfortunately, the foam that we have on there, the EPS, is usually somewhere between 1.5 pounds and 2 pounds pressure on it, and you've got you can push your finger into it, so you can imagine a rock will push into it, right? And it's great. That's why we want it to be kind of soft like that. That's what gives it its R value, and that's what gives it the insulation value and stuff. So you don't want it to be super hard, but it will affect how that liquid will work. So that being said, there's areas of different geographic areas where you don't have to worry about rocks a whole lot. You're not worried about something punching a hole in it, and the liquid's going to work really, really good, and obviously way better than the first option of nothing. It's usually price effective. It's usually the lesser price option of the three.
Labor wise, it's usually really affordable.
Yep, correct.
Then you get into our market, and we can talk about from experience there, because of the rocks that we have, and when we do basements, we do a foundation drain around them and all that stuff. We started using a peel and stick, and the peel and stick is very effective. It's not the easiest to work with, in my opinion. I got stuck to it several times trying to help install it. It's messy, but it does work very well, stays in place. When they're backfilling, the rocks are not going to puncture it and go through it.
I shouldn't say it's messy. It's not actually. It's very clean. It's not messy.
Yeah.
It doesn't get anything on you. It just sticks to you.
Yeah.
If you're not paying attention. There's probably people who do it a lot, and they're listening to us, and they're thinking, these guys are idiots. They just picture us rolling around wrapped in peel and stick.
I found that it was easier on basements than it was on crawl spaces.
Yeah, and some way, you can drop it down. Yeah. It just depends.
It just depends.
Yeah, it just depends. And usually you'll see these, like, I think we've, just so you know kind of what we're talking about, usually they're logoed. So a lot of times you'll see them and they'll have different brand names on them. Some of the block companies actually private label them. So it'll say, Nudura or Superform or, Anvik, Foxblock, where they'll have their own private label on the, so a lot of times you'll see it and it'll be usually marked up like that. So if you've seen something with that on there, it's usually what you're looking at is the peel and stick. It's usually kind of in a white color of some kind.
Yeah. A lot of times it looks like Tyvek.
Yeah, it does. And kind of covers up, It's basically the really nice thing about it is is it comes down in one solid piece from above grade down, and then makes that turn at that footer cold joint and goes over the edge of the footer and into your drain field, right?
Yeah.
So the application of it is very logical in the way that like the water hits the side, you got hydrostatic pressure, comes in from the dirt, it hits the deal, goes down, and it drains down into the drain field. So that's what gives people peace of mind. And back to the liquid, and I'm not trying to bang on liquid here, but some of the samples we have for our waterproofing company, we like to show people the difference between a 20 mil sill and the 40 mil and the composite and different things, and then just the damp proofing that they use. The one really interesting thing to me is that gap between the stem wall and the footer. If it moves at all, you've completely lost your seal. So, which a lot of people don't know, that the buildings move for years after they're built. The footing is going to sit one way in the stem wall or your basement wall or whatever you have that's coming down. Your vertical wall is going to sit another way on there. And it's not uncommon for them to travel an inch, in the movement and back and forth. It can frost heave up in the winter, different things in the summer, settle back down. There's a lot of movement that I think people don't believe happens.
Well, it's not noticeable most times in the house.
Correct. I mean, I guess you can hear the popping and cracking sometimes in an old wood house, and that a lot of us that grew up in a wood house remember that sound, right, of it popping or cracking as the temperature's changed or something. But
or now what you would see in a house, within the first year is some drywall cracks or something like
stuff
that.
Like that. So the house moves a little bit, and that's not all just the lumber or the walls moving. Even in an ICF house where you're not going to get any movement or sheetrock pops in the walls, you're going to run into that because the ground's going to move a little bit.
Yeah.
So that's just not uncommon. It's nothing to freak out about. It's just the way it is. The earth moves, things move, and you do physically have two joints there. Now, obviously, they're connected by rebar. They're not moving enough to break apart or shatter your foundation or do anything weird. But you do need to think about that when you're waterproofing, because that's got to stretch and move a little bit. Sorry, my phone started ringing, buzzing me. I had to turn it off. Forgot to turn it off. But it needs to travel a little bit. And so it needs to actually move. So that's something that's really good with like the Suprema is actually a very stretchy product. And even if the house moves a little bit, it's not going to break that seal. You're still going to have a continuous waterproofing going down.
Yeah.
So,
and then this is the thing with the peel and stick, it starts up the wall below or, above where you're going to start your siding, so that your siding sits over the top of it, so that when you're all finished with the house, rain hits the house, goes down the siding, and it doesn't get behind that peel and stick. But then you have to do something there to finish that off as well.
Yeah. The part, you got to part coat that.
Coat it, or we've had several clients that we did metal along there. Just different options, because otherwise you're going to see that white or whatever color peel and stick with those logos sticking out on it, on that.
Well, let's hit on that at the back and the end, because that'll be our finishing comment, because we have to do that with all of them. So let's get through. So the rigid board, same thing, right? That's all going to be the same. But moving to rigid board, most of it's black. It's going to be a black hard plastic, like I said, we call it dimple board, and it's basically going to roll out. You can buy it in different sizes, so you're going to buy it depending upon the size you need or the depth that you're covering, because it is more expensive. It's about the most expensive of the options that you have for waterproofing. So this is a premium product. It's very durable. It's very much designed for these rockier climates and things where you're dealing with some issues like that. It's going to drain anything that gets behind it, which is one of the things they talk about, which I don't agree with totally, because then it gets the water coming down the wall behind it. But I've had people actually try to discuss that. That one's always been an interesting, which we'll get them on here and talk to them about that, because they call it a rain board or whatever. Not sure what they do to get the water out of that point, but it's not something that we deal with a lot, or something that we use a lot. I've used it one time.
So I've never used dimple board.
20 some odd years now. I've used it one time, and that was a requirement because the rocky ground was so rocky. So, but it basically will have a lot of different trim pieces and stuff to go with that, which is what kind of drives the cost up. You've got like a trim piece at the top, and you've got different molding, the special screws with washers that lock into them that go together. Again, not very knowledgeable on this, so we're going to try to get somebody on to talk to you about that. But just so you see it out there, it's usually something that you'll see mentioned in those groups a lot, and it's because it is like kind of the ultimate way to do it, right? Because everybody's wanting that durability, everybody wants it to be strong. And I've even seen guys say, "Well, I'm not kidding. I know guys that use all three. They're like, well, water's the devil, and we don't want anything in here, and it is. So they're willing to." They waterproof it. They do a peel and stick, and even on the peel and stick, you only back up peel and stick. Peel and stick actually does have a primer too. This is a debate that I get from people all the time. I know most of the guys I know don't use the primer. They just stick it right to the wall. Or like myself, I buy winter grade year round because it's just stickier. I don't have any problem. I keep our jobs pretty clean. We wash them off before we seal them. So. But I have had people say, no, you have to have the primer. We've sold a lot of primer to people. There is a primer product, a Last-O-Matic type primer that goes on at first that will make it adhere better. So that's something to throw in there too for the peel and stick. But I've had people that will do all of them, and they'll stick everything up there, and then they put the dimple board on top. And whatever. If you got the money to do that, and that's the best way to do it, I think that's super great. The one thing that we run into, going back to what you started to talk about there, is we still have this issue that we have to deal with between the siding / stucco, whatever you're doing for your wall covering above grade, to where you're going to cut the waterproofing off at grade. So you've got that area that's exposed. So you're going to need to make sure that you're covering that with some sort of like parge coat, or like you said, we've done metal has become very popular. People doing sheet metal because it actually will kind of if you just buy galvanized sheet metal, it patinas out to the.
And it looks kind of cool.
Real cool rust look. I've seen guys use the fake stone, to cover that area. And basically, you're just trying to get a rain plane that goes over top of the waterproofing so that you're kind of covering that seal so that anything that does come down the wall runs down over the top of the waterproofing and then down into your drain field.
Because we can't take siding all the way down to the dirt.
Right. Yeah.
Stucco, siding, whatever. By code, you can't.
Yeah, you can't take it to the dirt. So it's got to have something that you're going to cover with. So we refer to it as a parge coat. Most companies, do sell a hand mix, a powder. Usually it's a B2000, Durarock B2000 or something like that they will, sell you in a bag, and you mix it up and you trowel it on. And it's usually a 3-step. It's you trowel on a coat, and then you trowel on some fiberglass mesh, the see-through stuff. And then trowel on your top coat, and it's going to turn gray and look like concrete. So therefore, as you're driving by, it looks like a
standard foundation.
Standard foundation. Yeah. I mean, nobody's going to even know it's a ICF foundation by driving by and looking at it. So, but that's something that you have to do, to cover that area. It serves two purposes. You're covering that area to get rid of the foam that will turn yellow if you leave it exposed. So don't leave it exposed. It gets ugly. And then it's going to give you that drain that will cover over that whatever method you decide to use for waterproofing.
Yep. And now to the last one that you were talking about, the composite 2-part system.
Yeah, with Hulk.
Yep.
The interesting thing about Hulk is that we use it because we can order it in concrete gray. So we're actually spraying our waterproofing and our parge coat in one system. We don't need a drain shield because it's hard enough that you can't put a hammer through it. So I mean it. And I mean that, like I literally, we send people samples. I call them hammer samples that we have. They're little 12 by 12 squares of ICF with the Hulk on it, and we let them hit them with a framing hammer as hard as they want. We do them at trade shows. Yep. We do all that stuff. So, I think people just like to hit stuff with hammers, but it gets them to do it. Yeah. And you'll hammer that thing. We've gone through some samples, and you'll hammer them until it comes off the ICF. The ICF behind it will break before the waterproofing will. So it's a different, like I said, very, very cool product. And we'll definitely have the guys from Hulk on there. And I actually emailed or texted Brandon today to ask if he could jump on here on an episode with us, but he was busy. So selling lots of Hulk, but we'll get them on there and we'll get everybody else on here. Cause I think everybody, there needs to be options out there. Again, not an ad for them, but it's a very interesting new product. I would put it under kind of that new innovative product thing that, not here to debate it with anybody. You guys can all go do your own research and look them up online and look up your different options for waterproofing and kind of see what you want to do and reach out to us. If you have any questions, I'm happy to give you what information I do have about it.
What I was going to say with the Hulk, it does require some specialty equipment to install it. I mean, unless you're going to roll it on.
Yeah, you can roll it if you want. Yeah.
It would be time intensive to roll it on there, I think.
Yeah, we run it with the sprayer. But.
Yeah. So just, there's I think there's pros and cons to every one of them, and it depends on your environment, what your soil is like, and then, the resources that you have and the level to which, you need to protect from water around your property. Yeah,
and I think it's like I said, everyone can take a look at the what your area requires. First of all, that's your minimum.
Yes.
What's required. If you're not in an area that's requiring any kind of waterproofing, I still say to waterproof it, because the bigger picture is this. Everybody goes, I don't have a high water table. Oh, I don't have this. I don't have that. Well, you may have an idiot neighbor that leaves his sprinkler system on all night and the water may flow right down into your house. There may be a fluke rainstorm and we deal with this in more desert type climates like Arizona and places. The ground is not able to absorb the water. Yeah. And so you end up with these really weird, ways that the water runs, just dependent upon the ground and the streets and everything else. So you don't know what is going to cause that leak. It's not always just natural water coming through the ground. And, I probably could have Googled this too. I don't know what the odds are on, or what the percentages are of natural water versus a water leak somewhere, somebody's water main breaking or somebody's sprinklers being turned on or, whatever it is to cause a water infiltration into your basement or crawl space. But you got to think beyond just the wall. So the one thing you can't fix, you can have the best waterproofing you want on there. We actually have seen situations where people came in after the fact and punched a hole through the waterproofing to put in your cable TV or your internet or some, security system. And they think it's no big deal. They just drill a hole through it and then it's fine. Well, it's fine till the water comes down and, you get rain or snow, even like snow packs up against the house, and it's just going right through this little 1/4-inch hole that was drilled to put wire through, and it's just a freeway for water to get in. And over time, that's usually how that happens. So other than above and beyond putting a good waterproofing on, make sure you're sealing every penetration for years to come. I don't care if it's 10-year-old house, 20-year-old house, it's ICF or, if you make a penetration in that, drill a hole through that wall to put something in or attach something to the house, make sure you're caulking it and sealing it and making sure it's not getting water through it. So no amount of waterproofing is going to help you if you drill holes in something.
That's true.
That I do know is a fact.
Okay.
I'll stand on that one.
Okay.
Anything else you can think of that questions have been asked? I mean, mostly people just been asking like, hey, what are my options for waterproofing and what do you guys do?
Really, that's what are the options? Is it required? Like, I know we got one question. They did a monolithic slab and footings in one pour to do a shop, and then they were going to set their block right on top of the concrete. So we got the question on that do they need waterproofing? It wasn't required in their jurisdiction because there was no crawl space. It was a shop. I know that we're going to go ahead and seal that cold joint anyways, right, and do some waterproofing, but if it's not, it's not required, but then again,
it's not. And that's an interesting one. And I think that's where I would probably go more of a liquid waterproofing that would just seal that gap where you're basically attaching your ICF tube because water is going to run down that. The other option too, that I've seen people do, it's really a good idea, is just putting a flashing, yep, a D-metal at the bottom of that when you're putting it on a slab that's going to have a lip, sticking up, because you just don't want it. You can't tell by the naked eye. It's really hard to tell if you've got a little bit of an angle there to where it's going to catch water and it's just going to kind of creep back underneath your block maybe. So I would always suggest to put some sort of waterproofing even on that, even on a slab situation like that, to seal that better than just letting it sit, more so than just letting it sit there. But, and again, that's, not another plug, but that's the thing about Hulk, because we could spray it gray and it would actually, then that way, whatever you're bringing down for your siding would cover right down to that, and it would seal that joint too. And you just look like gray concrete. It'd blend right in with the slab. So something like that would be beneficial. I don't know that I'd do like a peel and stick on that situation. I think I'd probably more so go with something, either a metal or something to seal that gap. But no, I think that's about it. We really did want this to be pretty basic, and I'm not, we're not doing this to say this, right, wrong, or indifferent of what these are. This is just kind of to educate you on some of the options, and now you can go online and take a look at those options and see what you can see. And obviously, the reason we're doing this is to answer questions. We want people to reach out to us. So if you have a question on it, if you have a question on anything that we've said, feel free to shoot us a DM and at Build with ICF, and reach out to us on our email at info@buildwithicf.com. You can even send messages through most of the podcast platforms and stuff. They will allow you to send a message to us that we will get. That leads us to the other thing, is just asking. The only way we're doing this, we're not really spending a lot of money to promote this. We're not doing anything. This is all just out of our own pocket.
We're not spending any money to promote it. We're just
this is out of our own time and money. We haven't got any big sponsors yet. We're waiting. We should be hearing any day, but we are definitely trying to get the word out to people. So please share this on any groups that you're in on Facebook. Share it on just any comments that you have about it. Please put it out there for us, and share it on Instagram. Share it on LinkedIn is a big one. I've been getting a lot of people that are catching it off of our LinkedIn posts. So if you've got people in the industry that or people that are just in the construction business that want to learn a little bit about this, please share the podcast. It really helps us grow our listenership, and it just leads to more better questions and things that we're getting from everybody. The more people listen, the more ideas we're getting for different episodes and stuff. So we're going to continue. We've got a big list. We're continuing to bring in different ICF block suppliers. We're continuing to bring in more and more products that are related to the industry that we found through different avenues, World of Concrete and different things like that. So we're headed on the road to the IBS show, which this will actually probably air right after we get back from IBS, which is not irritable bowel syndrome, like we said on the last podcast. It is the International Builder Show in Las Vegas, which is another big chance for ICF to showcase itself in with all the stick frame guys, and is a really, really important show for our industry, for people to get down there and be able to showcase that. So excited to go down there. We're going to see some people we know down there, and
lots of educational opportunities and different things, just to learn the latest and greatest in building and see how we can implement all that into ICF as well.
Yeah, and I might even have some more information when we get back, because I got appointed to a national council or committee on building systems. Basically asked me to come in and we're going to basically try to educate more people at the NAHB level on different options other than stick frame and building with firewood. And so I'll be able to sit in a room with a bunch of other guys that are trying to change minds. So that'll be really fun to kind of hear about that. And then I did mark a couple they had some classes, I don't know what they call classes, but speakers that were talking about concrete construction. So we're going to go to a couple of those and just hear what people are saying about it. So excited to learn some more and hopefully bring that back to our listeners and talk about it. And it might even lead to more guests that we can have on here. So
it always does.
We always find someone to come on. So thank you, everybody. I sound a little funny today. It's because I'm been sick for the last few days and my voice is a little bit shot. Doing a lot of cough drops to get through these episodes, and I'm a little drugged up. So if I sound dopey and can't find my words very good,
you sound normal.
It's because I'm all drugged up. So I apologize, but I'm on the road to recovery. I'm feeling better. Hopefully you're better tomorrow. So anyways, want to thank everybody for listening. It's like I said, I am overwhelmed by the success so far of this podcast. It's been a super fun ride and just getting a lot of appreciation from people and it's just been awesome. So we really look forward to just continuing to grow it and provide more information about insulated concrete forms to everybody. And so we really look forward to the next episode and getting another one out there and just making it that much better for everybody. So
all right, until next time then, follow us on our socials.
Build with ICF.
All right.
Thank you.